Welcome everybody to Nightcap Candid Cafe Conversations Season 2. I of course am your host, Maria. Hello, hi. I'm coming off of a sickness, so you get the raspy version of my voice today. Today I am absolutely, as always, delighted and thrilled to be joined by two incredibly wonderful, creative, gorgeous individuals. I have I have Eli and RK here. Hello, everybody applaud as is. Listen, I'm here with royalty today, so like y'all need to really step it up. But I've met these two people in real life. I've known Eli a little bit longer, but I have known of URK for like also a very long time, it feels like. But for the wandering passerby who may not know who you might be in specifically the internet spaces, what are some things that y'all do that people may be like, oh yeah, you're the person who did the thing? What sort of things? What circles y'all run?
Well, hey, I'm Eli. I am a professional TTRPG performer, GM, player, all that jazz, all the cards. Mostly, I do a lot of professional GMing for Start Playing Games. I run stuff like Urban Shadows and Monster of the Week and Fear Itself. Love running games for friends and for people who are new to the space. In addition to that, I also stream games. Something that is already done, that's already out, that I've done is No Peace and Death. It was my first time GMing on stream with friends who roll dice. And outside of that, I've done a lot of player stuff as well, from my first appearance on Dice Priori on a Firefly stream to other Urban Shadow streams to one-shots, all sorts of stuff. So I am all over the place and nowhere all at the same time. It's lovely.
I had the opportunity. I think you were in my did you do the company with me on
Yes.
Mythos Mystery Society?
I sure did. What a time.
It was it felt like yesterday and yet still 1,000 years. I've been able to play in games with you and also run a game for you, and y'all should always be putting Eli in every game, always, when you have time, someday. But RK!
Hi! I'm okay. The places on the internet where I am is kind of everywhere. All TTRPG focused, but I'm also a professional GM. I am a streamer, podcaster. You may know me from Prism Pals, which has been on a very long hiatus. It was a all-queer D&D actual play that was for all ages. It's currently on hiatus, been on hiatus for a while. Don't ask me how long it's gonna be. I have no idea. And then I also have another project I'm working on called Fear and Living Color, which is an all QTPOC that stands for Queer and Trans People of Color, actual play anthology that is horror based. We have our prologue out currently, which also features Eli. It is the system View Scream, which is very fun and very cool. We actually worked with the creator of the game, Raphael, to make a custom scenario for our game. And that prologue leads directly into Volume 1, which we're currently recording, in the process of recording and everything, and getting that all worked on. It's very good. I'm also a safety consultant. I run games on Start Playing Games as well. I believe I already said I'm a streamer and a podcaster, so I think that's all covered. I've also written for a few things, like Splat Volume 2, Adventures in Cyberspace, and also Unbreakable Volume 1, which was a Own Voices all Asian anthology of adventures.
Dang, y'all. I'm just like ready to close my book, be like, all right, y'all need to go do you need to check out literally everything these two are doing, because they are powerhouses and they're damn good at what they do. Like, I'm gonna be the first to tell you that. I'm not the first. I shouldn't have been the first to tell you that. I'm gonna be the loudest right now to tell you that y'all are great. So I pulled the two of you specifically in this space because I know y'all know TTRPGs, and really I've noticed that in this season of Nightcap, I'm really focusing pretty hard on TTRPGs this year because I just really want to talk about them, and they're really, really cool. So I'm gonna start by doing the question I'm asking literally everyone, which is your favorite TTRPGs at the moment. Systems specifically, like they can be, shows that you've done, but I know this may be a harder question for people who play TTRPGs literally all the time and do so in a professional scenario as well. So I would like to know, specifically for the two of you, since you do both, favorite systems, and it can be more than one, to run and to play.
So I started out running, actually, if I go further back, I started out running Numenera, ran that for 2 sessions, then ran Pathfinder, then started writing D&D 5e. I took a break from D&D 5e for a long time, and I ran a lot of Powered by the Apocalypse games. Powered by the Apocalypse, for anyone who doesn't know, is kind of it's sort of a template that a bunch of games use where like players have playbooks that have specific moves in them, which are kind of like phrases and things, which activate on certain conditions. It's a 2d6 system, so you use 2 die 6s, and it's very simple, very fun. You can basically play one Powered by the Apocalypse game and know how to play every single other one very easily, which makes it a very like fun and easy way to learn other games. So me personally, with Powered by the Apocalypse, I started with Monster of the Week, and that is still a personal fave. So that's one of my faves to run, especially because like as the GM, I find myself so geared towards like supernatural and like investigations and those kind of things. I love building intrigue into a world, so doing that with a game is very easy. And then also with Powered by the Apocalypse games, a lot of it is you as the players, you as the GM answer the questions of the world together. And so it allows me to kind of lean into those collaborative questions and answers in a way that makes it really easy to play the game. It's different than D&D, where it's very hardcore. GM comes up with all the basis of everything, and then the players only know their section of the world, and like there's a lot less give in D&D, I feel, than with Powered by the Apocalypse.
Yeah, there's less load work. And not to make it sound like the keeper, whoever's running it, is doing less work, but it's like you were saying, in D&D specifically, there is this preconception that like as the GM, you have to be the one to like literally run people through things. You hear people like you run people through scenarios and etc. etc. You have to be like the one who is pushing the story forward, which, yeah, you should have an idea of where the thing is, but like that is something that I agree with you, that I really like about PBTA, is that it does kind of naturally allow the person running it, the keeper, to take a tiny bit of a breather when it comes to specifically world building, because it is so collaborative in that aspect.
One of the things that's great to do is then take those lessons you've learned from PBTA and then apply it to your D&D and be like, okay, rather than me answering the question, when a player rolls high enough on like an intelligence check or something to figure out this thing about the world, you ask them, oh, how do you know this? What is the specific thing that's occurring here? And they will tell you how they've learned this sort of thing. It allows the players to build not only the world, but also their character a bit more. So maybe they've run into this type of monster before, so they know its weakness, or like they've read about this in a book, or some weird person on the street told them this weird legend that made no sense, but it worked out. So that's I really love PBTA games when I'm playing and running. The other games that I really love with running is one-pagers, because one-pagers are just so easy to just pick up and go. I'm thinking like Honey Heist, Lasers and Feelings, and if you don't know Lasers and Feelings, there's about 30,000 million hacks of Lasers and Feelings. So if you're looking for a specific genre, you can find it if you're looking at hacks of Lasers and Feelings.
There's one that a good friend of mine Ashenworks made called Hot Tubs and Himbos, which you can find on my YouTube channel. We did a one shot of that, and it's a bit ridiculous and wonderful and delightful. It's very easy to do. But yeah, like what makes specifically like one pagers
one pagers are very fun to run in this fact that like it's a good way to bring people into TTRPGs, of like getting them to try and break into a sort of headspace of imagination where like if they're struggling with like I don't know how to picture this kind of thing, you can pick a very specific like this is a genre of movie you like, this is a genre of media that this person likes, let's run a game of this to try and like get them into the mindset. So for example, there's one called I think Blood and Chrome, which is based off of Mad Max. Really easy to get someone who's interested in those sort of stories into TTRPGs if you already have this base frame of the world of like, hey, it's inspired by Mad Max, so you're going with those kind of themes. It helps them then picture what they're going to be doing. Honey Heist, where you're playing bears who are stealing honey, everybody knows a heist movie. So no matter like who you're talking with, they'll be able to think of a heist movie and just superimpose a bear on it. And they get it. They get what's happening there. It's really understandable. It doesn't require a lot of knowledge, where I feel like a lot of modules and things for D&D, and of course we always go back to D&D because D&D is like the cornerstone, but where D&D modules often require a lot of background knowledge of things, of like, oh, you're in Neverwinter or whatever. What the heck's Neverwinter? I have no idea. Or like you're in Phandalin. What is that? That means those are just nonsense
sounds like an
words
instrument.
Yeah, exactly. So like I think that's one of the reasons why our one pagers really shine, is because you don't really need the background to understand what's going on.
Yeah, I just did a one shot that was Jason Statham's Big Vacation, I think is what it was called. It was a one pager that Grant Howlett did. Which Jason Statham, I didn't know the name, is an actor who does a lot of like ridiculous kind of over the top action films, kind of like James Bond-esque. But that's like basically his whole repertoire. And so it's a one pager where you play as people in Jason Statham, the actor's entourage, as he wants to go on the best vacation possible. So you'd be like specific people, but like I didn't know who Jason Statham was, but I did know it's a person who does action films, and I was the bodyguard for a person who does action films. And the goal was to make it, one, as ridiculous as possible, and two, to make sure this guy has a really good vacation whilst someone is trying to either destroy him mentally or physically or in any sort. It was ridiculous. So like one pagers, y'all, do them. They're great for conventions too. Like if you are safely going to a convention, or like with people or around people, or you have like an online situation, one pagers are so easy because you don't have all you need. It's like literally it's in the name. It's just one sheet. You have it, you have the game. Voila, you're done. You did it. Congratulations. Huzzah.
What about you, Eli?
Yeah, so I started up running D&D as well. I found out very quickly that D&D was not what I wanted to be running, but I did not know of any other systems really at the time. So it was like, I'm just gonna keep running this and cry about it, I guess, to myself. Mainly because, and I just recently like really like dug in and found out this about myself. I don't really like systems that have a lot of lore pre-established, because there's this expectation that I as the GM have to know all of it, and I have to have read all of the books and know all of the things. Fun thing about me, I hate reading. Really do. Please don't tell any of my teachers from elementary school that, but that's how it is, how I am now. Like if I have to read, yeah, if I have to read like a very long thing with all of this lore before I can even get started, no, it's a non-start for me. So when I started getting involved in Powered by the Apocalypse games and stuff like that, I really enjoyed just being able to run with whatever like we wanted the lore to be. was having a conversation with our Vampire the Masquerade GM about like world building and all of that stuff, and I was just like, I don't really establish any of the lore of like the little cities that I run my games in until someone asks a question. As soon as someone asks me, so like, what's the Fae Court drama like? I'm like, okay, so this is what comes off the top of my head, and now it's canon. Okay, cool. And most of the time it works out fine. And also I get to like ask that player, that person, what do you think like your role in all of this is? Or what do you think your relationship with this person is? And using those answers to further build on the lore and how these characters are going to be and all of that other stuff. So Powered by the Apocalypse stuff, especially Urban Shadows.
I love Urban. I swear, almost every single one of these so far, I have I love Urban Shadow so much. But please tell me why you love Urban Shadow so much. I would love to know.
Yes, Urban Shadows for me has such great range. It was the first Powered by the Apocalypse game that I ever played, but like it had so many aspects of games that I was wanting. It was my first time encountering a debt system. So for those of you who don't know, debts are like basically your way of like being able to call on someone else to do something for you because you did something for them in the past. And it was like, you mean I can monetize these favors? Absolutely. Give it to me.
It's so juicy.
Yeah.
It's so good.
So there's that. There's intimacy moves, which I am a person who is always like role play first. I'm a very role play heavy player and GM. So getting rewarded and getting also consequences for having like very meaningful, very heart-to-heart scenes with other people was something that was very appealing to me when I first started, and it still is very much now. And I just like that we can make the story whatever we really want it to be. I am right now, while this is being recorded, we're doing casting for a Wild West Urban Shadows TTRPG actual play that I'm super duper excited for, and super duper excited to like just slightly shift the language that's in the rule books and everything, because it's Powered by the Apocalypse games are made for the ones that I've played have really been made to be able to shift with whatever story you want to be telling, as opposed to like trying to run D&D in a super duper modern setting is just it gets weird. You have to change literally every other word, and it just like it becomes, people do it and I'm happy for them, but once again I hate reading. If I hate reading, I hate doing the editing as well. So Urban Shadows for me has been very much like very good for that, and very good for me being able to expand on my GMing skills, especially of building lore and like asking players the right questions to get them thinking about certain things. I appreciate that during session 0 for Urban Shadows, I basically can make the story from there, like make the plot of the game from session 0 what it's going to be, because the questions that I ask the players tell me exactly what their characters are interested in getting involved in, and also what their characters are avoiding and hope don't find them. So then I can write that down. We won't bring it up in the first episode, but maybe episode 3.
Yeah.
So that's very good for me GMing wise. Player wise, I adore it as well, but I am on a horror kick lately. I don't know why.
I'm there with you though, so like it's yeah.
I have been like, I absolutely despise watching horror movies because my anxiety is horrible. I watched all of the Scream movies when I was younger with my family. Don't ask why. And I was having like straight up nightmares for weeks, to the point that me and some friends in college were playing Dead by Daylight, and they had recently gotten Ghostface as a killer, and I wasn't even thinking about it, and I was working on a generator, and then I turn and I see Ghostface peeking around a corner, and I fucking scream. which I do not scream like ever with like horror games or anything, but I was like screaming and running for my life. Like this man was actually in my apartment. But can't stand horror movies, but absolutely love horror TTRPGs and like love horror actual plays and all of that stuff. So a lot of the player stuff that I've been really liking being involved in is Vampire the Masquerade. Fear itself is a new one that I've really been diving into and really enjoying. And I love it. I love being able to personalize the horror. I love being able to for some reason, being fictionally involved in it is better for me than being fictionally watching it. I have no idea why. Ask the psychologist. Who knows?
I think that it's a little bit of like, you don't quite know what's going to happen, but you know that there is safety around it, because that's like,
oh yeah.
as opposed to like going to go see a horror film where like, yeah, you can look up content warnings and stuff, but there's still that like, there might be, yeah, exactly. That thing that like, but I didn't consent to be scared in this way, but though I don't like this one though, you know, that kind of mentality, as opposed to like I know at least in y'all spaces, people are scared the way they want to be scared.
Yep. I think one thing that's very funny, so for those who don't know, Eli and I are dating. We have a lot of the same sort of mentalities when it comes to TTRPGs, except Urban Shadows. Yeah. Because I don't like Urban Shadows.
Tell me more.
To run or play. I've played it once, I've never ran it, but it felt too punched down. Like, I felt like anytime I tried anything, I was destined to fail, to the point where even using debts wasn't fun. Like, using someone else's debt to get them to help me wasn't fun at all, because I knew it was gonna screw up anyways, no matter what I rolled. And it might have just been a GM specific thing, but it was just not a great experience for me, and I have not gone back, because I've been like, no fun.
Sour taste. Yeah.
Whereas like other games I feel like are suited for you to succeed, or at least get really close to succeeding and then fail in a narratively satisfactory moment. So yes, that is something that I disagree with Eli on.
Illegal.
Canceled. We're done. Gotta go. But no, that's something that I do appreciate about specifically Powered by the Apocalypse as a system, is that, like you were saying earlier, Arcade, because Powered by the Apocalypse is just like the skeleton. If you don't like one of them, for this example, if you don't like Urban Shadows, there's so many other ones that you can do. There's Masks, if you like that kind of like young adult superhero kind of adventuring thing. I think there's so many of them. There's one that's like a cyberpunk themed called Sprawl that's really interesting. There's
Glitter Hearts, which is magical girls.
Yep. Thirsty Sword Lesbians, which is magical people, kind of sword people. Maybe you can be magic if you want to. But there's a huge gambit of genres and all that sort of stuff. So like Powered by the Apocalypse is a great one for if you don't find one you like, go look, and there's so many. If you like the system but don't like the one that you're playing, there's a lot of them.
There's actually a website that lists every single PBTA game and which genre it falls into. I don't know the exact one.
I'll find it.
We'll look it up.
We'll find it. It'll be somewhere around here. Yeah.
But it lists like the genre, the type of game it is. Like, it gives you basically everything you need, and then it even links to the place where you can buy it if it's still available. Because Powered by the Apocalypse has been around for a while. Some of these games are no longer on the internet and available.
I know you were speaking about horror games earlier, Eli. There's one PBTA horror game that I've been meaning to dig more into because I have it. It's called Tremulous. And it's a like it kind of digs more into like a Cthulhian horror, kind of eldritch, small town spooky, kind of like if you to pull a reference like the Innsmouth horror, kind of like that, kind of a weird space, and people come into that weird space and things are just kind of like off and you realize there's something else entirely.
Kind of like Night Vale, I guess.
A little bit like Night Vale, yeah. I would. That's another one. But that's one that I really wanted to dig more into, because much like you, Eli, I am. By golly, I sure do love running and being in spooky shit. It's so tasty and so good. Which is like, I blame the entirety of the Mythos Mystery Society for that, because like they've gotten me to do some scary stuff and funny stuff, but also scary stuff. That's just been great and wonderful. Shout out to the lads over there. But specifically about running TTRPGs and things of that nature, y'all do a lot of, if not exclusively, your TTRPGs that you run, you do it online. Have either of you run games in person, either like now or previously?
Yes, I have done both. I actually started running games in person. So I ran it for a bunch of my friends in college and everything. We were playing Pathfinder, then switched over to D&D 5e. But it was in person, and then of course I got more online with like podcasting, streaming, and everything. And all of my games nowadays are online. My local friends and I are trying to figure out a way to do in-person games, but we haven't gotten that fully scheduled yet. We also have to worry about like COVID and everything and testing and stuff. So we're discussing that, trying to figure out a way to do it again. But I've done both. And also it's just a completely different experience.
Yeah.
When you're doing online TTRPGs, there's energy there. There's enjoyment there. Don't get me wrong, I love playing online, especially because I don't have to leave my house or dress up or go out into the world. I hate having to wear pants because pants are the worst. I prefer shorts, so I always get to wear shorts at home. So like running games in person, however, has a different kind of energy, because you have everyone else around you and by you and listening to you and everything. I was fortunate enough to go to PAX Unplugged this past year with a bunch of friends, and we ran one of my Start Playing Games there at the convention while we were like at an Airbnb, and the energy in the room was so different. We were all rolling dice in front of each other. People were screaming in natural 20s or natural 1s. Everyone was shouting. One of our players pulled from the tarot deck of many things, like right in front of everyone. Like, it was intense, and it was so much fun. And like, that's a bit of the difference. Don't get me wrong. Online TTRPGs can be just as much fun and just as intense, but it's just the in-person sort of like feeling the energy in the room that's different.
Yeah, breathing that same good nerd air together. It's just like there's nothing like it. Absolutely, absolutely agree. How about you, Eli?
So I have never run a game in person, actually. I was thinking about it the other day, and I was like, I started running games before COVID happened, but I never ran one in person ever. I like played games in person at like I had these friends in college that would literally like cook for all of us. We would eat dinner and then play D&D together and then go home. It was a great time. But like it was always someone else running. I was like before I even started considering running. And then when I started running games, I was running them for one of my friends that was local, and then two of his friends that were in like the Atlanta area, because I was living in Georgia at the time. So it was all like Discord, Roll20. So when like the huge shift happened because of COVID, I was like, I'm already here. All that said, I did. So I was also in that game at the Airbnb at PAX Unplugged. Another aspect of it that you don't really think about when all of your games are online is I feel like the RP that happened during that session was just a lot more, it was a lot easier, honestly, to like flow with other people. Granted, we had a big fight that scene, that thing. We had like a physical fight with like
an enemy.
But also, like, right after that happened, there was a huge argument that erupted, like, between all of the characters. And, like, me and one other character just sitting there looking at each other like, oh, shit, this is it. In which, like, obviously, like, we had safety tools and everything. And it's, like, it's very good that, like, we had all of us, like, were well-versed in safety tools and knew when to check in with one another. We all know each other. We've been RPing together for a minute now.
Almost a year. It'll be almost a year.
Yeah.
Like, for this specific game, it'll be a year in July. It's already July, but like late July.
Yeah.
Oh, dang.
Yeah. But like there was just a completely different energy about like RPing and everything, because like I could literally look you in the face and like say this thing to you. And like that there's just a difference when everyone's on cameras and everything. It's still good and it still can be good, but it flowed so much easier. And I'm very glad that argument happened at PAX Unplug as opposed to doing it in Zoom and whatnot.
Yeah, because that's really the main reason I asked, is to talk about the kind of challenges and benefits of doing games online versus in person. And I think one of the things to bounce off of that is there is this energy that you can't quite get when it doesn't translate well doing it, or doesn't translate the same, I should say, doing it online, like this sort of thing, versus doing it at a table or in a space where you're all together. I think one of it is just literally like the internet lag. If you've been doing online TTRPGs with voice and or video or some combination for any length of time, you learn that you need to give a little bit of space so that you're not talking over other people. And that can sometimes break up a little bit of the flow and the tension when you want to interrupt someone, and like that kind of like argument sort of a thing where you're talking over each other trying to get your point across. It doesn't translate well over the internet airwaves. But since you've at least you both you've been in games in person and in games online, what are some of those challenges that you've seen running and or playing games online versus in person, or just in general? But you don't even have to compare them if you don't want to. Just some challenges and some like really great things about doing online TTRPGs, since that's really what the three of us at the very least that's primarily what we're doing these days, is online TTRPGs. So we'll just shift to that. What are some to restate, what are some challenges and some like really great things that you found running games or being part of games on the internet space? I
will say safety is a lot easier to take into account, Jesus Christ, when you're online, in my opinion. Because there are so many ways that I can do safety check-ins with like O cards and all of that stuff, and have lines and veils up, and do open door, open table, all of that stuff. Like, it's a lot easier for me to do online. That said, you can still do it in person. There are still ways, and I've like had discussions with people about how to do it, make it anonymous, all of this other stuff. But for me, being able to just type in a Zoom chat, hey, is everyone doing good? Or oh, question mark, whatever, is so much easier than saying, okay, everyone, make sure you have your X and O physical cards at your tables, or we're going to pass this hat around so people can anonymously say if they're good or something like that. Like, there are ways that you can do it. I prefer doing it online just because it just makes the process so much more seamless. Also, scheduling. I was just, right before this, I was in a session 0, and I was talking to the GM, and the GM was like, I haven't really gone to in-person things in a minute, so I forgot that I have to account for travel time when I'm planning things. And so now I have to go. I'm like, yeah, so if you have a 3-hour TTRPG scheduled, you have to schedule like probably closer to 3.5, 4 hours if you're like commuting on both ends of that. Not to mention any other like things that come up with trying to do things in person. It is a lot easier for me to just send the Zoom link 15 minutes before, hop on the call, be on for 3 hours, and then hop off the call. Yeah. We're good. Everyone's good. There's also a lot less expectation for looking a certain way when you're on Zoom calls. I don't care how close I am with people. There is an expectation that I have for how I look when I am like in person with someone. And that's just been ingrained in me over the years. Call it trauma, call it what you want, whatever. But if I'm on a Zoom call, like this Zoom call, like obviously I have a nicer shirt on, I have a little bit of makeup on, I did my hair this morning, cool. But like, I literally have shown up to other Zoom calls where like I was just in a t-shirt. I just got out of bed, so the hair is kind of a mess. Did not do any makeup at all whatsoever. But because I'm on a Zoom call, it doesn't feel as like necessary for me to like put myself together, especially depending on who I'm on the call with. So yeah, that may just be a personal barrier, and maybe I just need to get over it. But for me, if I'm ever leaving the house or inviting someone to my home to like do TTRPG stuff, I always have to present a certain way that just isn't present with online stuff, especially if you're not doing video. If you're not doing video, you can look however you want. No one's gonna care. No one's gonna know. So
Yep.
Yeah.
I think that like I have a lot of the same opinions on this. Benefits of online stuff. One, scheduling, as Eli said. One of the really nice things about running professional games on SPG and everything is that like I set my schedule. I like say, okay, this game is gonna run at 7:30 on a Thursday for 3 hours. Show up if you can. Don't sign up if you can't. And that's it. And like I don't have to worry about like, okay, is everyone available this Thursday? Is everybody available? Like, what are people's schedules like? You don't have to worry about it. You just basically say, hey, we're here and we're good to go. Show up. Another thing is, this is also similar to what Eli said of the fact of like just showing up, like to the call and everything. You don't have to worry about finding a space. Because a lot of TTRPGs, you need a table. You need like a big enough space for like 5 or 6 people, depending on how many people you're running a game for. Like, you need a dedicated space or a space that someone has readily available. And let's be honest, we don't live in a society where everyone has those spaces available.
Yeah.
And like, that was easier in college because we all had apartments and we all lived near each other. But now that we're out of college, we all have our own lives. We're living like 30 minutes, an hour or more across the country from each other. Like, it's a lot harder now. And I think that's one of the ways that online has really helped, of just like, you have your space already, it's just use it.
Yeah.
And it makes it so much easier, especially with like the advent of like online not textbooks, but like handbooks and things, or like Roll20 and like those compendiums, that kind of thing. Like, the way that things have sort of become more digital and easily accessible without having to have a shelf full of books that you need to find, okay, which one's the right one, which one has the rule I'm looking for, that kind of thing. You can just Control F and find what you're looking for.
Yeah.
I think that's like one of the other benefits. Another thing is like, it's allowed for spaces and collaborations that aren't really present when you are in person. In my area, all the areas I've lived, most of the game stores, if you were going to go into one that has like D&D, those type of things there, it's very white. It's very, very white. And having these online spaces has allowed a lot of different people of color, queer people, to all connect in a way that's kind of difficult in persons, especially if you're someone who lives out in like rural middle of nowhere, quote unquote. Like, it's harder to make those type of connections. So like it's if you live in a city that has that, that's great, that's amazing, but not everyone has that same sort of access. So that's another thing that I think is really great about online TTRPGs. One of the challenges I think with online TTRPGs though is like you have to test the waters sometimes, and that's kind of similar for everything, but like I can't tell you the number of communities that like someone I've joined or someone I know has joined, and then we've had to bail because we realized it wasn't the type of space we wanted to be in. And that takes a lot of energy sometimes, and it takes a lot of like like I said, it takes a lot of energy, it takes a lot of like persistence.
Yeah.
Because you got to keep going until you find a space that fits you, or at least one that isn't prone to the sort of old school ways of thinking.
Yeah.
Which can be very difficult.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that. And you kind of you touched on something that I also kind of wanted to talk about, because the three of us on this call are queer people of color, so that would be an excellent transitional topic of specifically because you mentioned Eli, the Urban Shadows game that you're currently casting for is primarily focused on players who are queer, trans people, of like BIPOC people. And I wanted to kind of leave, this is kind of an open question, and you can answer it however you want, but because y'all are people who are queer and are persons of color in this TTRPG space that is not well known for either of those things in years past, what are some, I guess, struggles that you've had in the space, either in the past or things that have come up, if you're comfortable talking about them, and some big wins that you either personally have had or that you've been excited to see specifically for queer or BIPOC people in the space? Either of those, if you want to talk about them or not. Listen for you. I just want to open the floor to whatever you want to talk about on that topic.
Eli, would you like to start off with this one?
Okay. Yeah, I got it. So I was fortunate enough that when I entered the TTRPG streaming space, I got in with a group that was really good, that I found a lot of friends in, and I expanded past that and like continued to find really good groups. I found some groups that were nah, but a lot of the groups that I encountered since then have been at least at minimum not racist and not queerphobic, and not sexist and any of that other stuff. That has not been the case for everyone that I've talked to. And when I say that, I mean specifically in the streaming space. I've encountered a lot of horrible spaces when it comes to like not streaming, like just text RP, or this person made a listing on Roll20. Horrendous. I won't go into all of it because it's literally what you find on r/TTRPG horror stories. And I am grateful that I have now a community of people that I can talk to, and that I can like say, hey, so-and-so reached out from such and such organization about this like project that I want to do. But do you know anything about them?
Yeah, what's their vibe? Yeah.
I need a vibe check.
Yeah.
I learned pretty quick in the TTRPG space that you don't just partner with any and everyone immediately, because that can come to bite you in the ass. I am fortunate enough now that like I know who to be around for the most part. And I know that if I don't know this person, I should probably check in with someone before I like automatically sign up to be like hooked up with them for however long this project is. That has been good for me, especially because I'm a person who likes being around people. I'm very extroverted. I very much like entering new spaces and figuring out like how they work and how things are going and helping like grow them how I can. Not everyone is the same. Not everyone has that drive to hop into new spaces, especially when they've had bad experiences. If the first TTRPG space that I had walked into for streaming had been horrendous, I wouldn't have done any of this stuff probably. Because it would have taken me a very long time to get back into streaming and all of that stuff. And there's a lot of things that just like wouldn't have happened. But for some people, it just takes that one time, or it takes just hearing about somebody's one time to just not be involved and not want to get into it. I will go and tell my friends who aren't involved in TTRPGs and aren't involved in TTRPG Twitter, I will go and tell them about the mess that happens on a daily basis, specifically on TTRPG Twitter, and they will just look at me like, why are you fucking involved in this shit? What are you talking about? Embezzlement? What? Huh? And it's just wild to people every time that I tell them, and they're like, I thought y'all were just like rolling dice playing games. And it's like, we are, but unfortunately also we're dealing with humans and people, and unfortunately we're dealing with people that have the same like biases and the same like prejudices that people outside of the TTRPG space have. So it doesn't matter that like we're marginalized for being nerds, whatever people want to say. No, they're still assholes up here sometimes. There are still like assholes at all levels of it. It's something that people don't really talk about, that like you can encounter someone who is just like one person who doesn't have a whole community backing them, that is just a horrible person. And then you can encounter people who have had people backing them for years that are horrible. And that's just something that is both frustrating, and I'm glad that we're moving in the right direction when it comes to it. Everyone, every time something like this comes up, there are always discussions about cancel culture, all that stuff, whatever you want to call it. I know me and the people that I surround myself with, we see bad and we walk away. And we're not going to like come back until there's like actual things that have been done about it. Actual things that you have done to like correct what you did wrong. Not everybody's going to do that. Unfortunately, a lot of people aren't going to do that. But there is, for a lot of people, and it does work for a lot of people to see like, hey, this person actually said some really racist shit at this time. And they didn't apologize. A lot of people now are more willing to say, okay, I'm not going to associate with them. I'm not going to give their show any money. I'm not going to like continue to give them clout, even though they like, there's this idea that some people have but are never willing to admit to, that like, if I continue to like support these people that are like huge in the TTRPG space, maybe they'll notice me and I'll have a chance. Or maybe this is me like giving some karmic energy into the world that like will allow me to be uplifted in the community. That's not how this works. I hate to break it to you. It's really not how this works.
Everyone needs to listen, because this is gospel right here.
I appreciate how big the space is, and I appreciate how diverse the space is becoming, and how we're constantly bringing more people in. But we don't constantly bring people in from different backgrounds by continuing to uplift people who don't support those people. So it's a lot of paying attention to what people say. It's a lot of paying attention to what people, who people are partnering with, because honestly, I will see that I will not know someone, but I'll see that they're partnering with someone who I know is a bad person. And so I'm like, okay, I'm not going to associate with you, because I don't know if it's that you don't know, but there's a large chance, considering how much like publicity has surrounded this thing, that you do know, and that you have just decided to push it under the rug, whatever. That doesn't fly with me. That doesn't fly with a lot of people. So yeah, we're moving in the right direction when it comes to it. I wish the movement was faster. I wish cancel culture were actually a thing, because if cancel culture actually existed, people would stop doing all of these things and stop like saying, oh my gosh, I'm getting canceled even though I'm still making $700K off this project. Oh man, shit.
Yeah.
So yeah, we're moving. I wish it were faster.
Yeah.
So I'll talk about the challenges / struggles, then cut to wins and good things. But I wasn't as lucky as Eli. I was in a lot of different spaces. A lot of them went under, or it was revealed to be like a cult of personality type of thing, or like just messed up shit happened and I bailed. And the only reason I kept going was because in those spaces where things went wrong, I had met people who were good, who agreed with me that shit was bad or that things have gone wrong, and like understood how so. And I don't mean things have gone wrong in the sense of like, oh no, we made a little whoopsie. I mean like people revealed, oh yeah, I've been making money off of all these people who have been working for free and I've been giving them none of it. Or like, oh yeah, I said something very racist and I'm double downing on it. That kind of stuff. Not small whoopsies. Not small whoopsies. And finding other people who were kind of like-minded in those sort of aspects. That was a real success, a real good thing that happened. But there were a lot of struggles along the way. And one of them was learning myself when someone had crossed a boundary that I had established and sticking up for that boundary. For a long time, I was very good at being like, not good, but I very much oftentimes would be like, oh, it's fine, it's no big deal, ha ha ha, laugh it off. And just learning to stick to that boundary and learning that sometimes the people you're very close to will disappoint you and not feel bad about it. And realizing that if they don't feel bad about it, then I shouldn't be here because I'm not as important to them as I thought I was. That probably struck home for a lot of people if you're listening, but that was a big thing for me that I like never had to do before, which was a struggle. It wasn't an easy thing. It sucked. It sucked to tell people I was friends with, like, hey, I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to be friends. I don't want to chat. I don't want to text. I don't want to check in on each other. I don't want to like review each other's projects, that kind of thing. It sucked because you realize that some people, either they like did something bad or they said something racist, and when you called them out, they doubled down, or they like excused it, whatever. Like, there have been a lot of different struggles that I've gone through, and there were a lot of days where I was like, I kind of just want to drop it. I kind of just want to drop it. But one of the things that's kept me going is the fact that I've met a lot of great people here, which, like I said, is one of the wins. And like, I think more of the wins is like charity events Charity events always feel so good to run. Even if they don't get as much as we want, it still feels good to run that with a group of people who are all believing in a cause. Events that uplift people of color and queer folks. So, like, for example, I was part of Roll for Solidarity this year, which was hosted by Transplaner, organized by Connie Chang. Transplaner and TTRPG Gifts, those two ran together. It was raising money for Black and Asian charities. There were a bunch of panels, a bunch of games. It was awesome. It was amazing. And like those kind of events restore my sort of like my cold, broken heart. And also just like the first game I ever GM'd on stream was a game called The Burned Bunch. It was with Off the Table. And that game has such a powerful place in my heart. Because we were all, and this wasn't on purpose, this was truly an accident, a completely QTPOC table for the game. Everyone was queer, everyone was a person of color or trans, like, it was great. And the way we all just vibed with each other and the way that we all sort of played off of each other in the space was so good. And truly that was the moment that I was like, this is what I want. This is what I want to make. Which is why Fear and Living Color was created, because of the fact that like I had made that space and I wanted that. So I think that was a win and a good thing. But yeah, it can be real rough. And completely agree with what Eli said. A lot of people have this mentality of like Eli said, the karmic justice sort of thing. Like, if I'm nice to this creator, they'll notice me and I'll get in with them. The parasocial relationship. That's what a lot of people have, and it's why they hesitate to call out their problematic faves, even though by problematic we mean like absolutely horrible.
Actually a problem. Yeah.
Actually a real problem.
Yeah.
There's two who were named recently. I won't name them personally here, but two were named recently for being not great employers and not great performers and everything. And everyone was like, oh, all their things are falling out. Like, they're not going to be working in the space anymore. It's been, I think, a month since that was being discussed. And it turns out that one of them is still at the company that he was at. They said that he was fired from, and that he's conducting an internal investigation into the situation. An investigation into his own actions as the company. And I just truly have to laugh, because if cancel culture worked, that wouldn't be happening.
Yeah. Excuse me. Well, first off, thank you for sharing everything that you all did. Thank you for your words. They were very good. My words are bad right now, but I promise. But no, I love to hear people's past experiences, specifically in the TTRPG space, because like mine is kind of, it's broadened a whole lot, especially in the last 3 or so years, but I came from a space of, my dad is Puerto Rican, but grew up in the States. I grew up in the States and really have like that kind of culture aspect to it. So, and through TTRPGs, not only was I able to connect with other, specifically Hispanic people who also played TTRPGs, but it was through TTRPGs and specifically Urban Shadows, which I think is why it's so big for me, that I was able to explore my queerness and my sexuality and like where all of that kind of jived and fit in and everything like that, and have been able to meet so many more people who are in the LGBTQIA plus communities and BIPOC communities, and like being able to say like, oh, I have friends now who are not white, and also I can proudly say like, no, I am Hispanic, and not be like kind of weirdly ashamed about it because I didn't grow up in like Puerto Rico or anything like that. Lonzo Gonzo made a incredible Three Kings Day event this last year that I got to be a part of. And when I tell you, y'all, I got to play in a game that was all Latinx and Hispanic and beautiful, wonderful, loud, brown people. I cannot tell you how many times I almost started crying because I never got that growing up. Mine was all drama, and I didn't want to be a part of that. So like having this like, and that's something that I specifically wouldn't have gotten had it not been for TTRPG spaces, online TTRPG spaces. I would have never met these people. I would never have met you people. And you know, it was through all of this that me personally was able to explore that, like, oh, hey, not only am I non-binary, but I'm also pan-romantic and demisexual, and figuring out, like, all of that beautiful gumbo was something I was able to do safely because I had people that I trusted in these spaces that was under the blanket of TTRPGs, but also had that, like, that safety net of like, I can just play a character right now and figure out if this also vibes with me, you know? So I in trying to, I like to hear people's goods and bads because like, I like to learn more about like what people have gone through, because I haven't had too many of the bads yet. And I'm grateful, and also like I like to learn, so thank you for sharing all of that.
Yeah, for sure. So there have been spaces that I have left and that I don't associate with after all of this time, and I am the type of person, I'm gonna tell you so you don't have to deal with it. That's how I've been my whole life. And that's just how like my brain works, because I'm like, I know how I felt going through this. I know how I felt like doing these things, whether it's a good thing or a bad thing. Good thing. All BIMPOC TTRPG tables, different energy altogether.
It's so good.
It's hard to go back after doing it, honestly.
Yeah.
But something also that I have, like, with these spaces that I don't no longer associate with, I will have people like ask me to, hey, do you want to be involved in this project? And then they're like, oh, it's with this space. And I'm like, oh God, I had a horrible time with them. And just leaving it at, oh, I don't associate with them, I'm sorry. And if you ask, yeah, I'll tell you what happened or whatever. I'll tell you what I went through. I tell you how I felt, because if you want to know, that's cool. If it's too personal, I'll let you know. But most of the time, I'm good with sharing. That's not a rule for everyone. That's a rule for me. I'm just going to put that out there. But I don't want other people to go through the mess parts of my TTRPG experience, because if I can like stop you from doing that and have you only deal with like the happy tables that I've had to deal with, or that I've had to deal with, been on, the happy tables that I've been a part of, and the like great experiences, and the literal like I've met people in the TTRPG space that are my literal family, that I go to whenever something is going wrong. I tell them literally every part of my day, even though sometimes they don't care because it's boring. I'm like, I don't care either, but here we are. We got to deal with it. Without the TTRPG space, I wouldn't have the family that I have. I wouldn't have my partner who I met through all of this stuff, playing the game that they hate. But the TTRPG space gave me a lot of good stuff. It gave me some bad stuff as well, that I now chalk up to experience that I don't have to deal with again, and that I can tell other people not to deal with in the future. Just put it on the resume. But I think all in all, it's been a very rewarding part of my life, definitely. Probably the most rewarding thing that I've done out of like everything. Fuck college. This is good.
Yeah.
I agree with that. With like the great things that the TTRPG community have given us, because like I also would not have found my partner without the TTRPG space. I wouldn't have found out that I was non-binary. I wouldn't have discovered that I was polyamorous without that. Like, my worldview has so drastically shifted from before I was in TTRPGs, with like my understanding of myself and the world we live in, and where I feel like I fall into that world. In addition, like Eli was saying, this is something we both agree on. If we have a bad experience with a group and someone asks us like, oh, what was your experience with this group like? We'll tell them, because of the fact that we don't want them to struggle. And like, mind you, that is also sometimes on a person-to-person basis. Because like, if it's someone I've never heard of who's asking me, I'm like, I didn't have a great experience, but I'm not going to go into detail here. If it's someone I know in the space who I'm like, I know that you're a good person and like we get along very well, we have the same belief systems kind of thing, I will tell you exactly what happened and what went wrong there. Because sometimes it's just like, if you're talking to someone you don't know if they hold the same values as you do, or the same sort of like, hey, this person said this fucked up thing on Twitter, deleted the tweet, never apologized. I have the screenshots of it. Will you think this is fucked up, or will you be like, oh, it was just a joke? Which those are like two very different sort of systems, and like some people don't follow that, which is fine. That's how they live their life. But I don't want to have to go through traumas or like retell my traumas to someone who's gonna say, oh, well, that wasn't a big deal. But yeah, I think that like telling people like, and like not every thing that goes wrong is a systemic problem. Sometimes it's just someone messed up and you just can't move past that, and that's okay. You can tell them about that. Other times it is a like, we need to let everyone know about this. Like, I think that one thing that the TTRPG space struggles with is a lot of people airing personal grievances that aren't like but like they're personal fights that aren't related to how the space exists. Like, oh, me and my partner got into an argument, now I'm blasting all their information on Twitter. Like, that's messy. That's like not the sort of call outs that I think need to be done, where it's like, oh, this streamer has not paid any of the people who's worked for them and they've earned $10,000 in the past month from advertisements, whatever, that kind of thing, which I feel like is a more like systemic issue with that streamer and that kind of thing. So I think that's one issue within the system. But I was going somewhere with this, and I don't remember where that train was headed.
Oh, welcome to this track. I understand. You're welcome here. It's all good stuff, though.
So one thing that I had an issue with, this is kind of me giving my example. There was a GM who I was in a game with who did something that I did not know was a line, but without running it by anyone. Without like informing anyone that it would be done. And it was big enough that I actually left the game. And it's not something that I publicize. I don't wish that person any ill will. I don't think they did anything super wrong. It was just that in that moment, safety felt so compromised that I could not go back to that table. To the point where like, Eli knows this, I was super stressed about like, do I want to go back? Do I want to keep doing this? What is going to happen here? And I basically told the person running the table, like, hey, I'm going to step back from the show. Here's what happened. I don't really want to discuss it and like get into it. Like, I don't really want to try and have you change my mind. I'm just going to go. And the person running the space was like, that's totally fine. I'm very sorry that this happened to you. I'm going to talk with the person who did this to make sure that like it doesn't happen again, but I understand. And that was it. And it was really well taken care of, but I also haven't put that person on blast because that was a personal issue that happened one time and it was just me and everyone else was fine. I know I asked two other players at the table, be like, hey, how'd you feel about that? And they were like, it was fine. It was just unexpected, but fine. And I've had other people who, once again, are like, oh, I think I would have been fine in that situation, but it was just me. So that was a personal thing that I've only told friends who were there when I was experiencing it about it, with the specifics and everything. And I think that another thing the TTRPG community needs to be better about is holding to their this person fucked up and we need to hold them accountable type thing. Because a lot of times you'll see people be like, screw this person because they did this, and then 2 weeks later it's like, oh my god, did you see this project coming out from this person? It looks so good.
Yeah.
And it's like, just last week you were saying they're a terrible person and they never apologized in between these two things.
Yeah.
So it's something that I wish the community would do a bit more.
Yeah. Kind of not that there's so much content being made that there's no excuse to only go with if someone has done something that is legitimately worthy of not giving your support to. There's so many other in this economy. There's no real excuse to not go to someplace else.
I will actually name a specific company that I'm thinking of.
Let's go. Let's do it.
Kraken Dice.
My
Fuck
god.
yes. I agree.
Please.
I agree.
Kraken Dice ran a Kickstarter and a while back, a long time ago. I forget what it was.
I was part of that Kickstarter, which is why I'm not afraid to put them on blast for this.
And they were running a Kickstarter to make a bunch of dice. The dice were gorgeous in the photos that they posted. They earned, I believe, over $1 million. It was a lot of money. It was a lot of money for these dice, and they kept breaking through stretch goals, kept going forward, kept getting amazing results. And then we weren't getting dice. And they kept being like, oh, well, the dice aren't ready yet. We're waiting on the orders from China or whatever, from wherever we're getting it made, blah, 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 blah. And every other week, they're posting about how they've gotten new dice in and they're selling it on the site and it's limited edition, never to be printed again, never to be made again. And it got to a point where people were like, listen, I think it was over 2 years or so. And people were like, listen, please give us our dice. Stop making new dice, just give us our dice. And they kept saying that they were running into issues, which I understand happens with this kind of thing, but it just kept going and going and going until the point that they were like, okay, all the dice are shipping out, these batches are shipping out first, then these batches, then those batches, and the dice were horrible. Truly horrible. I have a bunch of sets. I ordered a bunch of sets for me and my friends, and I basically ended up telling my friends, I'm not giving these to you because they're so bad. And you would think that people would stop purchasing from them, stop working with them, the kind of thing. Kraken Dice made a new Kickstarter account recently to try and run another Kickstarter in the year of our Lord 2022. I'm not religious, but it's a good phrase. And people, I don't know if they ever got funded or not.
I don't know.
But people were supporting
80%
them.
or something.
80%, which means that some generous person's gonna swoop in at the very end and push them to 100. And the fact that they're funding, there's an entire account that on Twitter that has documented the entire thing with Kraken Dice. From the very beginning, has gone through every single post on the Kickstarter campaign and everything.
It's so well documented.
And
the thing that really tipped it over for me, because I was blessed to have dice that they look all right. I didn't get any of the clear ones. The clear ones,
clear ones you got screwed. I ordered all clear ones.
Well, I'm so sorry.
Because they looked so good in the photos. I was
so
like,
good.
This looks so good. Every single one of them is clear. It's supposed to be clear and colorless. It is clear and yellow.
Yeah. Yeah,
Every
it's
single one.
nasty. I did look up their latest Kickstarter. You want to know how they beat their goal by $641?
Which means that they funded, and I'm sure it's going to be another mess. But they made a completely new Kickstarter account to do it, so people can't go to their previous campaigns and point out the flaws with their previous campaign. And I believe they were offering refunds for a period of 2 weeks or something. Then immediately we're we're not offering refunds anymore because of how many people were asking for them.
Yeah. And the customers, again, this is all, it's documented. You can absolutely dive into it. The customer service that a lot of people got was it was it was only a few people that from whoever was dealing with the customer service side of things that really were just awful, really bad. And I'm sure not, and this isn't a blanket statement for every single person who works with that company, because I'm intelligent enough to know that not everyone involved in the company is a terrible person. Whoever was doing the Kickstarter, whoever decided the dice were good to go, is really, and there's so many better dice places to go to.
Yes, and in addition, the creators are also pretty right on the political spectrum. And that was something that came out in the middle of all of this. And it was not a great time. A good time was not had by any. And there were so many issues with the dice, and they're still going. They're still trucking along, no issues, no problems, no big bumps on the road or anything. And it's one of the issues that we were talking about of people aren't sticking to the don't support these folks because they really messed up.
Yeah.
And they never apologized. They basically doubled, triple, and quadruple down.
Yeah.
I did look at their Kickstarter when they were funding, and I was looking at the Q&A section to see if they say anything about the previous one. They just said, we learned a lot from our previous experience with Kickstarter, and we're making some adjustments to the expectations and blah, blah, blah. A bunch of basically lip service. Not one apology, not one, we did this wrong. Just, we learned a lot. I'm please go choke.
We will inform the
dice.
customers that their clear dice will be yellow.
That's learning something. We learned not to talk to anyone about anything ever again. Well, drama aside, TTRPG Stays is not just about drama, even though we tell dramatic stories and we are the drama that we bring into our spaces sometimes. I wanted to kind of round out this whole conversation on more nice brain feel conversation. Specifically with the two of you, since you are running a bajillion games these days. I wanted to kind of dig into your brains a little bit and have you think a little bit about the future and what, through your stories, through the things that you facilitate, the games and all that sort of stuff, what kind of stories that you are trying to tell, if you have an answer to that, and then through what you all are doing, at least now in the spaces that you're in, what sort of things that you hope to leave behind in these spaces when you do eventually move on to something different or other. Nice, easy questions.
Yeah.
Save the easy ones for last, right?
So, for me, it kind of stems back to trauma.
Love this.
Being a queer person of color growing up, not an easy thing. Trying to survive every day, a struggle. Content warning for discussions around mental health and mental illness. I have depression, clinical depression. I went to my doctor and got diagnosed after college, and she truly looked at me and went, "You've been dealing with this for how long?" what? And I was like, yes. And a lot of that came from the fact of like feeling so alone. And so the stories that I want to tell, the stories I want to build are ones that give hope, ones that give a sense of being seen. It's part of the reason why Prism Pals was where we started, where I started, an all ages queer story. All the main cast was queer. All the main characters were queer. Truly, it was one of those worlds where if you're gonna ask me if a character is queer, the answer is gonna be yes. And it was important to us to like build a story and a show that could be played with kids in the room, because too often queer content is age gated or like said to be too adult. And so we specifically were like, we're going to build content that is for younger people. And we stumbled a few times. We did stumble. I will not say that we did it perfectly, but I think we then found our stride in a really good place. And then we got the messages. We got messages from people being like, hey, this really helped me. This was really like, it was so great to see this character talk about their depression, or like, it was so great to see this character talk about being queer in this way, or like see how relationships play out, that kind of thing. And I think that was something that was so important to me. And I think that very much helped shape the type of stories I want to tell. Hopeful stories that represent people who don't feel as seen.
I think my biggest thing lately has been reclaiming narratives. A big reason why I wanted to do this Wild West Urban Shadows campaign as all QT POC is because in the past and in a lot of Westerns that you find, I have not watched a lot of Westerns for this specific reason, that typically the people of color and the queer people are not treated kindly, and are very much treated as other or in their own spaces and all of this other stuff. And I really wanted to be able to tell a story that was about us, and that didn't have to deal with all of the oppression from other groups and all this other stuff. That's something that I really enjoy, and things that I really enjoy for larger aspects like old time USA, but also for small personal things. So I did not come out as gay until my end of my freshman year of college. And I didn't really do much dating or like any like romantic things at all whatsoever when I was in high school. So this is part of the reason why whenever I run things like Monster Hearts or Monster of the Week or stuff like that, I don't put it in high school or anything, because I don't understand. It's just not a it's not a situation that I ever experienced, so I don't get it, and I don't want to do it wrong. Also because romance with kids is weird to me, so I'm staying away from it. But I like being able to take the stories that like have been typical, that we typically see in the media, of like romance and of action and adventure, and basically putting ourselves in those character shoes, and not treating it as like, oh, it's going to be, it's got to be its own separate thing, but like integrating it into the stories that already exist. A lot of the games that I run take a lot of inspiration from the movies that I've watched and the shows that I watch, because I grew up watching so many movies. That was my parents' thing, was watching hundreds upon hundreds of movies. And taking those narratives and like saying, okay, we've got this like basically all white cast with one emotional support person of color. Okay, let's change that up a little bit. And like
Let's get our token white in here.
Let's go.
Yes.
It's our token straight person. Let's go.
Taking that and then putting like our own sort of spin on it, but also just like embodying it as us. Something that a lot of white people don't understand is like it's not possible to just put a black person in a white character's shoes and give them the exact same script.
Yep.
Because it's not going to make sense. It might make sense to white people, but it won't make sense to other black people. One thing, especially with horror, that I struggle with is, and I think when we were playing that Fear Itself one-shot, Maria, we both experienced this at the same time, sort of the scene where I think it was Ty's character is in like this room and there's this fog and something keeps nipping at his legs and someone else's legs. And we're just standing outside.
There. Yeah, we're just like, why are you in?
What are you doing?
Why are you in the room?
Get the fuck out. I'm like, obviously the thing is in the fog, leave. But Ty is just like standing there like, oh, that's interesting. Oh, shoot. I'm like, what the hell?
Oh gosh, oh golly.
Oh golly gee.
Something that I do struggle with playing horror games is what the fuck is going to draw me into the situation, because there's no curiosity of exploring the weird noise that happened in the room that I'm not supposed to go in. There's none of that. I do not care. That is someone else's business, obviously. But there are situations that like I do find it possible to find myself in. One of the games that I'm running right now is a Fear Itself game that takes a lot from the movie. I think it's called The Thing. I don't remember what year it's from. Please don't ask.
I believe it's the version from the 60s.
So there's that. And it also takes from The Faculty, which came out either late 90s, early 2000s. And then also The Society, which is a Netflix series that had one season that deserves so much more. That came out a couple years back. Basically, the premise of this campaign is you are with your like college friends or whatever, and you try to go on this trip, but something goes wrong. So you have to like just come back to campus. And above the table, we know that basically when you come back to campus, like you're not at the same campus that you left from, you're somewhere else. But in character, you're seeing all the same places, you're seeing all the same people and all the same things, but everything is off a little bit. And everyone that you see that wasn't on the trip is acting a little bit weird. And basically you find yourself in the face of this monster that is taking the faces of your friends, of your classmates and your teachers and everything, and able to blend in fully, and like has the memories, has everything that they can like pull on from that other person, but will eat you so that it can take your body and your face and mimic that. Putting me in that situation, that's not a situation that I'm just going to be like, oh, I'm just not going to invest. That's not my business. Oh no.
Yeah.
That's something
all of a
that
sudden, everything's your business now.
Yeah. This is my problem because I have to get the fuck out of here.
It's also, if I may say, that's a really, really good analogy for like cultural appropriation.
Yes.
Of like wearing another culture's face and it's off. It's really off. I think that's really good. I know we've discussed it and we've talked about it already because you're my partner and we tell each other everything. But I just love hearing you talk about your games. I don't think I'd made that comment previously.
Yeah, I'm so remiss that I have not yet played in one of your games, Eli, because I've either had not the time or the money, and they haven't, like, I've had one or the other, and like they never overlap in a good, convenient way. Because like every time I see that Eli is running a game, I don't care what the hell it is, I want to play in it so badly. And like I saw the show that you're casting for right now, and I'm like, I'm in, I'm going to do it. And then I saw it and I'm like, if it came on that exact time frame, why? The universe is against us, and
Truly.
Frankly, it's a little bit queerphobic. Like, I'm just gonna say it. Just gonna call it out there, y'all. Universe, get on this.
Talking about horror, though, I agree with Eli in the sense of like reclaiming genres a bit. Because I've been doing horror for a while. Horror has been truly. I started out family friendly, all ages, and went immediately into horror after that. And like it has been so fun to bring people of color into horror where they haven't been, or queer folks into horror where they haven't been, because of the fact of like, we all know horror, but we get to put our own spin on it. And it makes it so much more enjoyable. And like the Burned Bunch, once again, that is a show that I ran a while back. One of my players got to play a spellcaster who was retracing the steps of their grandmother, like in the game. And it was so powerful to watch that story continue and like evolve and change. And it was so amazing to just see that. And then especially like all of the stories, no matter like the character, were so inherently related to being a person of color. Like one of my players, Nordin Ali, who some people might know from a bunch of other shows and things that he's been on, there's a moment in the show where he looks at me and asks like, hey, is it okay if I pray like right like in the game as this character? And that was the first time Nordin Ali had been able to like pray in a game as a Muslim character, like actually get to embody that, rather than just be like, this is a Muslim character, we're never going to talk about how it affects their belief system or anything. Which like is so much more powerful than like what happens in a lot of white spaces, where you feel like you have to minimize portions of yourself to fit into the white space better because they don't have the capacity or the level of understanding to comprehend the totality of yourself.
I love talking to y'all. Y'all are you're full of such good things and words and juice and stuff, and it's great. I love it. So I guess the final Eli, did you have anything else to add, by the way, about any of your stories or anything you want to tell? Okay, I just wanted to make sure because like I do want to know what sort of things that y'all do hope to leave in these spaces, because like obviously you want the stories that you tell hopefully will persist beyond you, and you know the impact of those stories will persist beyond you, but kind of in a more broad sense, not necessarily in the specific game to game, but in the kind of general overall sense of like where you are right now in the TTRPG and on the online space. Like what sorts of things are you hoping stick around once you decide to do other things, or if you decide to do things, or you just kind of continue?
I want to leave things gayer than I found it. And also more person of color focused / like more, I won't say equal, there's another word I'm looking for in my head that I can't remember because my brain is the way it is. I would like to make a more just space, or leave behind a more just space, in the sense of like, I want to see less people being tokenized, marginalized folks being tokenized. I want to see more like people getting equity rather than just like having to struggle along to try and find a crumb of appreciation. And I think I also want to leave behind a place where people feel safe and brave enough to be themselves. Besides the bigots can go.
Yeah.
This isn't the space for you.
The space for you is the dumpster.
It's nice and big.
Lots
Maybe
of
you need
room.
fire next to it. Yeah.
I think for me, it's a lot of the same. The first show that I ran, we didn't advertise the casting call as all POC, but it just ended up being that. And the second show that I'm running, I was like, well, I don't really want, sorry, white people. I did not want white people involved in this because this was specifically about reclaiming that Western narrative about surrounding people of color and queer people. I want to do that, and I want other people to feel comfortable doing that, feel comfortable like setting those boundaries of like, this is exactly what I want this story to be. This is who I want the story to focus on when it is focusing on someone who isn't normally focused on. There are identities that I am not a part of, but I enjoy being able to see people say, hey, this is going to be an all Latine production. And I'm like, awesome, cool. I'm excited to see this, and I'm excited to see like what the story is so that I can get more insight on like both your culture and how you approach this story. I really love the fact that like when I started GMA and putting shows together, I was able to just say that and people were like, yeah, cool. Because that wasn't always the case. You still to this day, you say to some people, I want to run an all person of color TTRPG stream, and they're going to say self-segregation, racist, blah, 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 all that stuff. And honestly, they can kick rocks, whatever. I'm very grateful that I was able to do that, but I want to continue to give people the confidence to continue to make those spaces and feel safe making those spaces. In addition, feel comfortable asking for money. I have been pro GMing for a little bit less time than RK has, and we both deal with sort of the same what is the word I'm looking for? Jerks.
Imposter syndrome? Oh, jerks.
Okay.
We went different directions.
Two sides.
Different directions.
We'll start with imposter syndrome, actually. We both deal with the same imposter syndrome of like trying to justify asking for people to pay for our services. I look at RK and I've seen RK's work before we even started dating, and I was absolutely in awe and absolutely just like, of course I would give them money. They're fucking amazing. Like what, how? Yes, take my wallet. But I look at myself and I look at the stuff that I do, and sometimes I feel really good about it, and sometimes I feel good about asking for what I ask for when I run pro games, or asking for sponsorships when I'm running streams. But a lot of the time, especially when I first started out, it was I don't see why people would ever give me money. I'm not that good. I was comparing myself to people who were making tons and tons of money doing these things or whatever, and I'm like, I'm not on their level. There's no way. And at first it was I had to stop comparing myself to them, and then it was I'm going to compare myself to them because there are some aspects that I am better than them at. Not a lot of people will say that they're better than Matt Mercer. I'm better than Matt Mercer at certain things. I'm gonna just say it.
Matt Mercer is a person.
Yeah.
Like, and that's something that I think people are scared to touch, is like,
yeah.
Oh, he's critical. Matt Mercer is a human being.
Literally.
He's not all encompassing as a person. Can he tell good stories? Yes. But also I prefer Eli's stories.
I'm just like, if people are like shelling out hundreds upon hundreds of dollars, like I literally look at I used to watch a lot of Critical Role, and I used to buy a lot of their merch, and remembering back to how much I was willing to spend on the Laura Bailey dice bag when that dropped, I'm just like, why can't I ask for like a fraction of that. And like I'm getting to a point now of being able to like just say, hey, this is a project that I'm doing. I would like to not do it for free. Like I'm going to do it like regardless because this is a story that I want to tell. But I would appreciate it if you, being the entity that you are, would support this financially. I appreciate the retweets and like thank you for retweeting this thing that I tagged you in, but we also need your money because this is time that we're spending doing these things. These are stories that we're like pouring ourselves into and doing an amazing job at. So the imposter syndrome is like one thing that like was a barrier to get past with the money thing. The other part of it was just randos on the internet saying, I have literally been called the destroyer of creativity because I had the audacity to put in my banner that I was a professional game master, that people could pay me to run games for them. And at first it was like, it's always been like a badge of honor. I always go back to destroyer of creativity because it's just like, it's so awesome. Damn.
Me? Oh.
You thought of me?
A title like that for little old me?
Yes. But also it's just like, look, I understand that you run games for your friends. I also run games for my friends. I run games for my friends that I don't charge them for. The Fear Itself game that I'm running right now, it's free. Like it's me and 3 of my friends, and we're just doing it because I really want to learn Fear Itself and run this game, and they really want to play Fear Itself and learn this game. Cool. But there are also like instances where I'm like, hey, I'm putting in a little bit extra work. I would like some coin. I'm doing all the scheduling. I'm doing all the world building. I am doing all of the like safety stuff at the beginning of this and keeping up with it. If it's streamed, I'm helping with I'm helping by advertising the show and like actually doing it and giving my all in it. I feel like asking for a fucking $1 is not a lot.
In addition, we run games for friends who have chosen to pay us. Like we have friends who are like, yeah, I'll pay you $10 to GM this game for me, or like, yeah. And like multiple of my players I have had since I started pro GMing to now. Like there are literally some of my players who have been comparing how many games they've been in to be like, I've been in this many of RK's campaigns. I've been in that many of RK's campaigns. And like, there are people who are willing to pay you for your work if you're willing to ask for it. And like, yeah, sometimes you have to do a bit of extra work, but in the end, I think it turns out better.
Yeah.
Get paid.
And also, you're more motivated to do that work sometimes.
Oh yes.
That's the big thing. Yeah, if there's money on the line, like I'm the first person to say that I like to choose the most convenient way to get something done when it comes to doing pretty much anything. And usually that involves a little bit less effort. But if I'm getting paid to do something, you bet your ass I'm gonna be like, all right, everyone, here you go. We got an outline. I don't write outlines, but here you have one now. Here's like 7 maps. And so that's something that's been really hard for me to start doing, is being like, I need to prioritize my time to do things where I know I'm gonna get money, because I have run out of time. So now we need to really we gotta that's the thing. And it's like, if it's charity work, that's different. That's a completely different thing. But if it's like somebody comes up to me and is like, hey, having people come up to me be like, hey, I want you on my show was a thing, and talk about imposter syndrome. But like, when it comes to like, there's 1,000 shows that are being like advertised, being like, hey, signups are today, etc., etc., etc. Then I'm like, fantastic. And then I go down there and I'm like, I could do it, but then also you say that you're not paying anyone. And I'm like, the idea is really cool. And if I had the time, like extra spare time, 100% I'd be down for it. But like, it's so hard to have gotten to this point of being like doing 1,000 games and then being like, now I have to pick, and it's really, and I want to get paid so I can like eat and all of those things, you know. And it sucks because there's so many opportunities. To tack on what I would something that to just kind of add to the end of that is, it sucks, but don't be afraid to say no. Don't be afraid to say no, y'all, for whatever reasons. If it's because they're not paying, if it's because I've had to say no to people that I love dearly because I either don't have time, or if I did have time, it's I need to rest, because believe it or not, y'all, you can't work all the time. As much as I try, you can't do it. But learning how to say no, even when you want to say yes, is so important, and is something I'm still learning how to do. But it's so important to do, y'all. Value your time, value your space, value the fact that you need to be valued, and be gay about it.
One other thing that's very funny, this is a commentary I've seen a lot about like pro GMing. One thing that I've heard about like pro GMing is people like, you're taking money from the space, and it's like, no, actually a lot of that money's going back into the space, because I support Patreon so I can get free maps, or like maps every month for my GMing. I like have an Incarnate subscription so I can build town maps. I like support other people in the space, so that like the money's just going back into the space really most of the time.
There's a common phrase that's tossed about, specifically in like the variety streaming space, that we're just tossing the same $5 around to each other. And I feel like it's very similar in a lot of like TTRPG space, at least like on the level that we're all just kind of gelling at, is we're not to the point of like a Critical Role or a Dimension 20 or like, you know, these wonderfully big successful companies, so we take the money that we got, and then we're just like, oh, my friend's doing this thing that's really cool, and I'm gonna go throw it at them, and then now we don't have it, and then it just kind of just keep juggling back and forth with each other, and that's how we keep each other going. we motivate each other through kindness and the same crumpled up $5 bill.
Yep.
Well, thank you too. This was delightful. You are a gem and a joy, and so delight. I want to hang out with you all the time. Before we leave this place in this space, I would love to make sure people know where to find you. If you've got any big thing you want to talk about, as like far as projects or anything, I'll make sure to give all the links to everything so that nobody loses you. But what are you doing? Where are you at? What can people find and do and play and all those things, Eli?
Yes. Hi. Hello. Hi. So you can find me on Twitter and most places at ReliableElliot. That is Elliot with 2 L's and 1 T. I am on Twitter. I'm on Start Playing Games under the same name. I'm on Instagram, but not really. It's there. Most of the stuff that you'll find me doing is on Twitter and sometimes Twitch. When this releases, I think we will be probably like midway through my Urban Shadows campaign over on Friends Who Roll Dice, entitled Demon Creek. As a Wild West, all queer, trans, person of color Urban Shadows campaign. We're doing casting right now, but we should be a little bit midway through the story and picking up some real juicy bits, I assume, as it goes. We'll be doing that every Sunday at 1 Eastern. If it's not that, you can definitely check my Twitter, where I'll be tweeting about it all the effing time. I also run games on Start Playing Games. You can find my profile as ReliableElliot or Eli Elliot. I am releasing new campaigns all the time. If you're wanting me to run something custom for you and your friends, I can also do that. You can message me. You can message me on there. I would prefer you message me on Twitter because reasons. If you are just looking for to know what I'm involved in and things that I'm going to be involved in, and also ways that you can just support me in general. Follow my Twitter. My pinned tweet has all of my relevant links and relevant things that I've been involved in, and also my Ko-Fi link if you want to drop some coin in there. But yeah, mostly I'm on Twitter. That's where I do most of my chit-chatting and also like coordinating for projects. So hit me up there.
Do it.
And you can find me on most social media as Russ Wildest. I'm on Twitter. I'm on TikTok. I've only posted like 3 videos on TikTok because I got overwhelmed. I am on Instagram. It's mostly pictures of my dog. I'm also on SPG as Russ Wildest. Actually, I think that the link is Russ Wildest, but I don't know if the name. I think it's RK Wild on SPG. But you can find me everywhere. By the time this airs, which you said was mid-September, I believe, I believe we will have just started a new campaign on Friends Who Rolled Dice that is currently titled Counselor Week. It is about a bunch of camp counselors who have a week off from campers, and then things start to go wrong. It's a Monster of the Week actual play, and it should be very fun. I'm very excited for it. And in addition, if you're looking to see my podcasting work, Prison Pals is available on all podcatchers. It did stop. We did not complete the story, but there is a mini campaign called Hunt for the Geyser, which is 4 episodes long. It's in the system Threadbare, which is about toys in a post-apocalyptic world. It is very fun. And then you can also find Fear and Living Color, which is my horror game. We're working on volume 1, and that should be out soon-ish. Editing takes time, y'all. It takes time. So hopefully out soonish, and you'll get to listen to that. But yeah, that's me. That's me all covered.
Yay. It's a legal requirement that you go and follow these 2, specifically on Twitter, but everywhere else, pay them money, and play in their games. That's just, it's the law here now. So you can't argue with the law, and I'm so sorry. I'm not sorry. I take that back. Everything is do all those things. If you're here, you know me. You can find me everywhere at happycapster. And again, thank you to you 2. Thank you for this was a trick to get scheduled because life found a way to make it very challenging, but I'm glad that we got to do it. I'm glad that you all got to hear my wonderful raspy voice for the last bit. But everyone who is watching, listening, thank you for joining us. I hope that your cups remain full and warm and full of things that you like, and we will see you next time. Goodbye. Bye.
Bye-bye.